Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here today with another anabolic Q&A. I've got some good ones queued up for you this week. We've got several questions for you. I have D-ball versus Anadrol. Which one wins in that battle? Let's talk about the differences between the two. And what somebody wants to know, what do you mean by buttoning up the 95% before worrying about the 5%? I'll talk about that and my thoughts on overcomplicating shit and bodybuilding and just life in general. Also, why am I waking up at 4 a.m. when I am on a cut or a contest prep? What gives, Paul? What causes that? And what do you mean by being ready for a show early? Can you define that for me? What is early? What's too early? We're going to dig into those questions and several more on today's Anabolic Q&A. All of these questions, for the most part, are from my school Anabolic Bodybuilding members community site. Folks, it's $29 a month if you want to join up. You get priority questions answered on the Anabolic Bodybuilding Q&A that happens weekly here on YouTube. Also, I participate in the forum over there where I will answer questions as people post them. So if you want access to me to ask questions, that's the place to do it. It's only $29 a month. I bet you anything that you're probably spending more than that on energy drinks. I know you fools, your energy drink consumption way exceeds the cost of what it would to be able to ask a question for me and for the Anabolic Bodybuilding Live Q&A here on YouTube. Also, I still have the sale going on for the Science of Anabolics and PEDs e-course that Kurt Havens and I have put together. There's over 100 modules and 60 plus hours of content, science-based content on anabolics and PEDs and how it is applied to the world of bodybuilding and performance enhancement. It is $100 off still. The code is USA if you want to get the 4th of July sale still going on. Grab it before it ends. This is a great deal. Get $100 off the course. All right, folks, that's enough of that. Let's dig into the questions in just 1 second. All right, first question I have here is from Paul Robinson, and this is a follow-up to the question that Paul asked last week regarding training on the rebound phase post-show, post-diet. Paul wants to know, when a PPL training split where you're training 6 days per week set up under normal circumstances, how do you recommend to ramp up the weight, volume, frequency, and intensity immediately post-show for the first weeks starting the day after the show? I like to get back into the gym immediately post-show. You're going to have some of the best training that you're going to have of your life in that period post-show because you're going to have this weight rebound and you're going to be eating a ton of food. You're going to fill back out quickly. Now, the caveat is, and this is something I always warn guys about, you're going to get really strong really quickly post-show because you're glycogen depleted going into a show. You've been calorie restricted. You've been in a deficit. When you go back into a surplus, you start eating carbohydrates again. Usually strength rockets right back up. You're going to have additional weight and water retention, which is going to increase leverage when you're lifting weights. So you're going to be able to push a lot more weights. Now, here's the caveat. Your estrogen's probably still going to be crushed from the show. Guys using things like Winstrol that are going to dry you out and lower synovial fluid production, affect mineral glucocorticoid or mineral water and mineral retention. Sorry, I botched that. You're susceptible to muscle tears and tendon problems I've seen post-show. Usually when you see guys tear shit, it is that 2 weeks leading up to show or 2 weeks post-show. Guys end up hurting themselves. I ease back into it. I do pump workouts and I will work back up to sort of my off-season volume and weights over a 3 to 4 week period of time. You're going to get such gnarly pumps post-show. It's a high probability that the pumps are going to limit your ability to go to failure. I would say to resist the urge of advancing and progressing your weights too fast post-show. That is a thing that I see a lot of guys do is they go directly back to their off-season weights. You want to sort of ease your way back into that and work it up. And you're going to grow regardless. So save your joints, save your connective tissue during that period of time, and just kind of slowly ease back into it. And then when you get into your off-season grind, then is when you're going to start progressing. You should be back to your previous off-season strength, volume, sort of where you were at, where you left off, in sort of 4 to 6 weeks is usually what I see. You closer to the 6-week mark is usually where I see you're going to work back up to where you were. You may even be ahead of that. I would just be careful those first couple weeks post-show. Let your body reacclimate to the additional weight that you're putting on and just work your way back up. Now, once the off-season starts, you can get aggressive with progressing. You can set new goals. You can progress further. You can work on that once you get into your off-season phase. Usually I do a 6 to 8 week rebound phase, something like an 6 to 8 week cruise. Sometimes guys just shift straight into an off-season if they're healthy. I like taking a break, let my body breathe a little bit. Contest prep, especially as an older competitor, is really tough on you. So I like letting my body have a little room to exhale. And then we'll get back into our off season and start driving things forward. All right, next question here is from Nathan Pena. Nathan asks, when you say people need to button up the 95%, what exactly does that mean for someone over 40% body fat? I assume 95% looks different for me than a bodybuilder prepping for stage. Can you clarify what 95% I should focus on when starting from a higher body fat? If you are just getting into this journey where you're just starting to lose weight, don't overwhelm yourself. I think sometimes people expect perfection and they try to do too much coming out of the gate, and then they end up burning themselves out or overwhelming themselves. I like to ease people into things. You don't even need to be 95% if you're just getting into it. If you're at 40% body fat, just cleaning your diet up a little bit, doing anything is probably going to get you progress. And as you get further down the road in the journey, then you're going to need to tighten things up a little more. Usually when I have people that are brand new to this, that are new to a weight loss journey, that are just trying to get into it, I'll keep it super simple. I'll just start off by having them track their macros. I'll have them download a macro app, something like Chronometer or Macro Factor or MyFitnessPal, something like that, and start tracking their food. I'll take a look at their food and teach them how to eat more like a bodybuilder, and we'll look at sustainable options to help them get things under control, lose some weight, and just simple low-hanging fruit. And a lot of times really small changes at the beginning, if you're 40% body fat, are going to yield significant results. Now, as you progress, as you ratchet things up, we'll start layering in more things. So you could probably just start off with very simple stuff, like just a tiny little bit of cardio. Start tracking your food and being more aware of what you eat. And when you're at 40% body fat, really the act of measuring and monitoring your food intake alone will be enough to correct mistakes and make you more aware of what you're doing, likely put you in a caloric deficit. Learning how to pick what foods to eat, when to eat them, how much to eat, that is going to help a lot. You don't need to be weighing every gram of rice like a competitive bodybuilder does. Now, if you want to, sure, go for it. That's get yourself in the habits early on and learn how things work. But you don't need to even be 95%. Now, when I talk about worry about the 95% before you worry about the 5%, this is talking about really it's just a metaphor really for not worrying about minutia. A lot of people get hyper focused on little shit that makes no difference, and that's really what I mean by the focusing on the 95% and not worrying about the 5%. It's not a literal statement. What I am saying is that people tend, especially very smart people, tend to focus on stuff that doesn't really matter when they're not worrying about the things that do matter. So, for example, I've seen people plenty of times that worry about injection frequency and injection timing, and they're not even weighing or measuring any of their food. They have no idea what their diet looks like. It doesn't matter when or how you take your injections and microdosing your injections if you're not even following a structured diet. doing daily frequent dosing of your whatever drug you're taking and microdosing it and splitting it up and timing it, with your workouts, it's not going to fucking matter if you're not following a diet. It doesn't really matter. So that's what I mean by worry about the 95% before you worry about the 5%. Focus on the basics. Do the basics really well. I don't literally mean 95%. I mean, worry about the basics. Get those nailed down. And then once you have those perfected, sure, you can go in and dig in a little bit deeper and worry about the tiny little stuff. When you're a high level competitor, when you're at that point, little details do matter. But when you're a guy that's 40% body fat or just a gym bro, worrying about all these little minutia and things like that probably make almost zero difference in your results, and probably are even holding you back because you spend more time worrying about shit like that than you do actually doing the stuff that does have a big impact. So focus on the things that have the biggest impact first. Don't worry about the minutia until later down the road. That's what I mean by focus on the 95% and not worry about the 5%. All right, next question is from Jake Maurer from our Anabolic Bodybuilding School members site. Hopefully, Jake, I got your name right this time. I fuck it up every time I say it. Jake says, I'm 11 weeks into my cut and I am waking up at 4 a.m. feeling refreshed, not hungry, but can't fall back asleep. Could this be from lower body fat and being deep into a cut? I'm already using 2 units of GH at night with magnesium glycinate. Is there anything else I can add it to extend sleep? It's likely just cortisol. Cortisol, when you're deeper into a cut, you're going to have cortisol and higher cortisol. A lot of times, what I see a lot of times, if you actually grab a continuous glucose monitor, when guys start getting leaner, they actually go hypo in the middle of the night a lot of times, or they'll get low blood sugar in the middle of the night. And you have the glucagon and cortisol dump, and blood sugar will shoot up, and then you're wide awake. A lot of times is what I see. And then a lot of times guys are running stimulants and fat burners. It does seem that when you're in a caloric deficit that there is some sort of fight or flight response that happens where your body gets in this state where the deeper you are into a cut, the more it's driving you to get up and go kill a buffalo, get some food, bring some food back to the campfire, feed yourself before you starve to death. It's probably an evolutionary adaptation that we have to keep ourselves from dying, preventing us from sleeping when we're starving. This is just pure bro logic and speculation. I don't have any science to back any of this up. Obviously, I'm just talking from my bro science knowledge base here, but that's just my speculation. But likely it is cortisol or some combination of cortisol and the blood sugar crash that'll happen a lot of times at night. You'll see it as you get deeper in a cut if you pay attention to your glucose levels. When you get up in the morning, guys will have high glucose levels, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not eating any carbs. I am starving. I am at single-digit body fat levels. How the fuck is my fasting glucose going up? And a lot of times that's what's going on. You have this thing called the dawn effect, or the Somogi effect. It's a little bit different, where glucose will drop at night. You have a glucagon dump, and then you will cortisol it responds as well, and you end up with high glucose levels as you wake, and that's going to just wake you up and drive you forward. And then we're beating up fat burners, things like Clen and caffeine. I find a lot of times that guys, when they're cutting and their energy gets lower, they start using more caffeine to compensate. I am guilty of that. I remember a contest prep where I was drinking, 4, 5, 6 energy drinks a day, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was just grabbing them out of the refrigerator and hammering them, and then I wondered why I couldn't sleep when I was having 1,500 milligrams of caffeine a day. So it's likely shit like that. All right, next question here is from Scott Brinkman. You've said that HGH gains are permanent. If I ran 6 units of Serostim daily for a year, would I keep the physique benefits after stopping, assuming my training and diet and rest stay on point? I didn't mean they are literally permanent. Obviously, it is possible to, break down muscle tissue and be in a catabolic state. It is possible. But what I've seen with guys that have been using GH anabolics and have done it for a long term. They end up having denser muscle fibers. They end up, a lot of times, just speculating here, there could be some hyperplasia that happens where you actually grow new muscle cells. And once you have those fibers in place, the actual contractile tissue doesn't tend to leave easily. Now, water and mineral retention and glycogen retention, nitrogen retention, that comes and goes. And I think that's a lot of times what guys confuse with the whole muscle memory thing. You think about a balloon where you let the air out of it, the balloon is still there, the actual structure is still there, and you fill it back up, then it looks bigger, but it's still the same structure that was there that contained all the other stuff. And something like 80 to 85% of the muscle, I don't remember the exact number, 80%, somewhere around there is just glycogen, amino acids, water, and other shit that's in there. So the actual contractile tissue, I think once you have it, stays pretty much in place unless you're on some sort of starvation diet, you're sick, whatever. And then the loss of size that you have when you come off gear is likely loss of mineral retention, amino acids, etc., and water retention, glycogen retention, all that stuff. And usually when you go back on, you'll blow back up quickly, within 6-8 weeks. I'm going to put that theory to test here soon. I'm down to in the mid 230s, low 230s. It's the lightest I've been in a long time. I would suspect as soon as I start lifting again after my post-surgery period, put some PEDs back in place, I'll probably blow back up to 260 in no time. That would be my guess. And that's what I've seen with people, and I think that's what people call about the muscle memory. It's not that the muscles actually remember anything. It's the actual structure. The contractile tissue doesn't really go away that easily. You have to pretty much be in a starvation diet for that to happen. And that's what I mean by that. It's not a literal HGH gains are permanent, but it certainly is part of the equation. Some of that is just years of hard training, years of using anabolics, years of eating a ton of food. All of it adds up. It's a cumulative effect. All right, next question. I got another one here from Paul Robinson. I usually don't do two from the same people, but this one is a good one, and I liked it. Paul asks, a fun one. Can you define and rank in order of what you mean by lean, shredded, peeled, exotically lean, and stage ready for amateurs and pros? Also, how long can you realistically stay at each level, mental and for your mental and physical health? So I don't know. It's hard to rank this stuff, but what I call exotically lean is shredded glutes, and stage lean really just depends on the class that you're in. But you really, for to be stage ready for any show, regardless of the class you're in, unless you're a bikini competitor or something like that, you want most, if not all, the subcutaneous fat gone. With men's physique, you can get away with a little bit of glute fat and hamstring fat because your legs are going to be covered up. As long as the abdomen and lower back are fat-free, that's all that really matters. For bodybuilding, your ass and your hamstrings are going to be out there, so you got to be fat-free in that part, and that's usually the last part that comes off. Shredded glutes, in my opinion, would be stage ready. Exotically lean would be the dudes that, it's just a term that I use. It's the dudes that basically get themselves to stage lean. Very few people ever get down there. And from what I have seen from years of coaching this, when I have people do DEXA scans, now keep in mind, DEXA scans aren't 100% accurate. I believe there's something like a 2% margin of error either way when it comes to body fat readings. But somewhere in the 5 to 6% range, probably closer to 6, is shredded glutes, stage lean, is what I've seen working with men. Now, that may be different if you're smaller. When you have more muscle tissue, you have more runway to carry a little bit more body fat. But what I have seen is somewhere in that 6% range. 5 to 6% is what I would consider exotically lean, stage lean. It kind of just the shredded beach body, good look, summer body look is going to be in that 8 to 10% body fat range. And, better than 98% of humanity having abs, but, not being shredded, not having shredded glutes. Probably the look that women prefer is in that 10 to 12% body fat range. Now, what I have seen, my personal experience Once you get down to 10 to 12% body fat, it's not that difficult to stay in that range as long as you don't eat like an absolute asshole. Getting below 10% sucks. You feel shitty. You don't have any energy unless you're some sort of genetic freak. I remember hearing John Meadows talk about how he never got above 8% body fat ever during the year, which may have been true. Some people just genetically are leaner. You'll see guys, I played basketball when I was younger, and there were some dudes that were eating Skittles and drinking Mountain Dew, and they were shredded year round. That's not me. I tend to get lean easily. When I push myself to get lean, I can lose fat easily. I also tend to get fat as well too. I can get a little fluffy if I'm not paying attention to things. But I would say that 10 to 12% is what I would consider reasonably lean. That's leaner than most people. Now, when we get above 15% body fat, that's usually when the abs tend to start to fade. 15% is probably the phase where you would sort of see the outline of your abs. Maybe when you're flexing in the mirror, you can see them a bit. That's sort of 15% body fat. And then 20% body fat is probably what most dudes are walking around at. You have a little bit of a pinch, a little bit on your gut. You don't have visible abs, or maybe you can see like the top two. And most people severely overestimate how lean they are. If I had a nickel for every time some dude comes to me and tells me he's 10 to 12% body fat, and then we put them on a cut, and they actually have to lose 30 pounds to get down to 10 to 12% body fat. Every bro in the world thinks he's 10 to 12% body fat, and most of them are not. So that's sort of how I would rank those body fat, in that range. But for a competitor, you want to live in that 5%, no more than 15 at max. Really, 5 to 12% is probably a good place to be. If you're a competitor, you want to stay within striking distance of your stage leanness. The leaner you stay on your off season, the easier contest prep is going to be. For just an average Joe, I don't know that there's a compelling reason to get much leaner than maybe, say, 8% or 9% for a summer body look. You don't have to do the extreme shit to do that. And, probably 8 to 15 is pretty good for most people that are, or 10 to 15 is pretty good for just the average Joe that just wants to be in shape and look good and be healthy. I will say this, getting down to 5% body fat is not healthy. You feel like absolute ass when you get down there. Your blood work is all fucked up. It's just not a good and comfortable place to be. I can feel great when I'm in the 10 to 12% range. I can sustain that pretty easily. It doesn't take a lot of work. Once you have been lean before, it's easier to maintain that. But I would say, that's a target place that I would live at most of the year. All right, next question we got here is from Aaron G. Deadlifts over 50. I have been watching your videos intently, and I understand why you refrain from free weight squats and deadlifts, as well as engaging in higher rep ranges. I do the same. After an MRI, my surgeon said my lower back is on par for a man my age who never weight trained. I've been deadlifting off and on since the age of 16. Also, Louis Simmons stopped competitive powerlifting at the age of 63. Maybe he's an outlier. I currently perform Smith machine deadlifts, sumo style, with the lowest reps being 10 right after doing upper back for one set to failure. What's your professional opinion for the pros and cons of Smith machine deadlifts with regards to physique enhancement for men over 50? Honestly, I don't particularly like Smith machine deadlifts. I don't like being locked into that plane of motion. I think it's really fucking awkward. I don't think your body is meant, when doing, some things I like on the Smith machine, some things I don't. It is safer for things like presses and stuff. But for deadlifts, the bar is not allowed to travel in the way that that your body wants to pull it. So if you're going to do deadlifts, I would just do regular deadlifts. And this is something I heard a friend of mine say who's an exercise physiologist. He said, you're only as old as your spine and your knees. And that's something I took very seriously when I started thinking about it. And most of the dudes that you see older, especially guys that have been powerlifters, like lifelong powerlifters. I know Louis continued to powerlift until he was in his 60s. I don't know how the fuck he did it. Probably painkillers and a lot of drugs would be my guess. You know, no offense to Louis. He was a complete badass. He's an icon. He's a hero. I think he's an animal, and it's something that everybody could really take some lessons from on hard work and how to just go after something. But I would say, unless you're a competitive power lifter, I don't know that there's a really compelling reason to be doing that shit when you're over 50. To me, and this is a personal decision, the risk of injuring my back, the risk of injuring my spine, the risk of damaging something that's going to cripple me for the rest of my life and make my senior citizen years, like when I get into my 60s and 70s, when I'd like to travel and do things and be active and live my life. To me, the trade-off of having a deadlift in my routine is not worth it. It's just not worth it. Now, that's a personal decision. That's a risk assessment that you're going to have to make. The analogy I would make is it's sort of like riding a motorcycle. It's, you know, you can make it safer, but there's only so safe you can make it. Same thing with taking PEDs. Same thing with PEDs. You can make it safer, but it's still an inherently dangerous activity that comes along with some risk. And obviously doing heavy compound free weight exercises are going to carry more risk than using controlled movements that are on machines. I personally stay away from anything that involves axial loading. I do not want to put my spine at risk at all. My back is in pretty decent shape for an older guy. I've had some injuries to my back in the past, but I don't want to risk further hurting it. My knees are all beat the fuck up. There's no way I could squat at this point, at least not squat safely and intelligently. So to me, squats are just not worth the risk at this point in my journey. So I don't do them anymore. But once again, this is a personal evaluation that you're going to have to make. That's my, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do them. I'm just saying, me personally, it's not worth the risk. And I have been able to grow my physique. If you just want to look good, if you just want to be big, if you want to be mobile, if you want to be healthy, to me, it's just not worth it. And there's going to be guys that argue it. I get that. But my personal evaluation, the risk versus reward is just not there. Now, if you're a competitive powerlifter, you got to do what you got to do. It's part of the sport. But there are no requirements to bench, squat, deadlift, whether it's on Smith machine or whatever for bodybuilding. Or if you just want to look good, do whatever. Do what's the safest, whatever has the best risk versus reward profile, the stimulus versus fatigue ratio, all of these other things that we evaluate when we are choosing exercises. To me, that's the thought process that I go through when I look at what exercises I want to include in my workout routine. Hopefully that helped. All right, next question here is from Mr. Sean Thompson. Sean asks, do you recommend lowering training volume during prep as energy and performance drop, or do you increase volume with reduced intensity? I've seen both approaches, but pulling back volume to maintain performance makes more sense to me. What's your approach in the later stages of contest prep? I probably take a different approach than what most people do. For me, there are a couple goals on contest prep. Number one, the number one thing we're worried about on contest prep is getting fat free. That is primary objective number one. If you don't get fat free, nothing else matters. Number two for me is preventing injury. I do not want to risk getting hurt. And when do you see everybody get hurt on contest prep? It's towards the end when they're still trying to lift the same damn weights that they did, in their off season. You're not going, especially as you get older, you're not going to be able to manage that like you did when you were younger. To me, that is another part of the equation. Like I've always backed off my weights going into the last part of my contest prep. And last year I grew on my prep. I have not seen any loss of tissue. I know there are the meatheads out there that argue if you lift lighter, you're going to lose muscle size. I have just not seen that be the case at all. Not at all. Now, there are people that will make the argument otherwise, but when you're running multiple grams of gear and HGH and all of these other things, the risk is pretty low of losing muscle tissue towards the end of prep, even if you back off the weights a little bit. And I am not a fan of lowering volume going towards the end of prep because Whether we like it or not, that is part of net energy balance during the day. When you reduce volume, you are lowering your net energy expenditure. You are lowering that net energy balance because a lot of times I'll see people say, oh man, my metabolism slowed down towards the end of prep. I'm having to do more cardio. I am having to eat less food. A lot of times they're just moving less. And you can monitor daily step count and see that. That's why, like anymore, I like monitoring step count on top of having prescribed cardio, so I can see if people have dropped down their activity level. And what lifting weights is burning calories. And if you look at the old school bodybuilders, the guys back in the 70s, Arnold and those dudes, and even the early 80s, they didn't even fucking do cardio on contest prep. They just did more volume. That's how they got in shape. And the reason that worked is because it's increasing energy expenditure. You're burning more calories. Now, is it the most efficient way to burn calories? One could argue maybe not. Maybe doing steady state cardio might be a better and more efficient way to do it. But at the end of the day, it is net energy balance. And me personally, I'd rather lift weights more than do more fucking cardio. I'd rather pose more than do more cardio. And I use both of those as a tool at the end of contest prep to burn calories. And if I have to lower my weights a little bit to maintain that volume, I'll do that. Now, there are some times, this is where it gets subjective. There are some times where you're just fried. Your CNS is fried. You're overtrained. You're fucking fried. You're in your sympathetic nervous system drive is through the roof. Cortisol is high, and you might need to back off just to give your body a break. Now, that's a different scenario we're talking about there. But for me, I see it all the time. Like, dudes will back off their other stuff, and they're like, damn, I got to do more cardio. I got to eat less food. Well, yeah, no shit, because you lowered your net energy expenditure and your net calorie balance for the day, your net energy balance is going to be lower because you've lowered your volume. And like I said, I'm reminding you, our primary objective on contest prep is to burn fat. You're not going to gain muscle on contest prep. Don't lose muscle. Burn body fat. Don't get hurt. Those are the three things I tell my clients. That's your job on contest prep. And learn how to pose. Don't forget that one. All right, next question here is from 488C3XXX. Man, that's a mouthful. This one's from YouTube. Interesting username. I wonder if there's some meaning behind this one, or it's just random. It looks like a pattern to me, but that's how my analytical brain thinks. Anyway, on track here. Hi, Big Paul. Can you do a comparison between Anadrol and D-Ball? Never used Anadrol. Always thought it was too harsh. And Dianabol I've used 3 or 4 times in the past. 25 to 30 milligrams is the sweet spot for me, and it's been great each time. Dianabol always seems to get crapped on compared to Anadrol for bulking. So can you do a brief comparison of the two? And which, on balance of sides versus anabolic effects, would you pick? Cheers from the United Kingdom. What's up from the USA, my friend? Look, I've shit on D-Ball in the past on here. Part of it is I just like to fuck with dudes because dudes get very emotional about when you talk crap about their favorite steroid. D-Ball to me is the favorite bro steroid. Guys that just want to blow up and look big but aren't actually big. I used to use a lot of D-Ball when I was younger, and I occasionally sprinkle it in here and there. The issue that I run into D-Ball, it seems to be the oral. It's interesting that you say that you're worried about Anadrol being too harsh, but generally what I've seen is D-Ball has the worst side effects out of any of the oral steroids. It converts to methyl estradiol. Methyl estradiol is an extremely potent version of estrogen, and it causes, in people that are prone to gyno, you're going to be a wreck. It's like overnight gyno if you're prone to gyno. Also, with D-Ball, another issue that I see that guys run into with D-Ball is water retention. They have huge amounts of water retention. The methyl estradiol is going to drive a shit ton of water retention. I mean, dudes will gain like 20 pounds in a couple weeks. I've seen, it's not uncommon for a guy to gain 20 pounds from 2 or 3 weeks of being on D-Ball. And that's fake weight. I think that's why gym bros like it a lot, because it will make you strong with the increased leverage in water retention, mineral retention, nitrogen retention that it promotes. And it gives you D-ball does make you feel nice. You get a very euphoric feeling from it. Maybe it is the methyl estradiol that somehow it drives that euphoric feeling. I don't know for sure. I'm just speculating. I don't understand the mechanisms of it. That would be my guess. And then also acne. Like I can spot a guy in the gym taking D-ball from a mile away. It's the dude that's red because his blood pressure is like 170 over 100. He's got a pizza back. He's got acne all over his back and his shoulders. And his face he's got the moon face, the bloated moon face. And he's gained 20 pounds in the last 3 weeks. That's the guy on D-ball. I can see it from a mile away. Now, there are times that it may be okay to leverage. What I have found with D-ball is the dudes that do very well with D-ball, there's some guys that absolutely love it, are the guys that are very lean, ectomorph types, guys that tend to not gain body weight easily, dudes that tend to be low estrogen converters, usually guys that are super lean tend to be low estrogen converters. They do really well with D-ball. And dudes that are fatties, dudes that tend to gain fat easily, tend to be high estrogen converters, tend to be more prone to gyno and other problems. Those guys do not do so well on D-ball. Now, Anadrol, for me, I don't run it anymore, really, because it causes me to have just horrific acid reflux, and my appetite just gets slammed. I just can't fucking eat when I'm on it. I already have a shitty appetite to begin with. But Anadrol, for me, when I was younger, or if I were to choose one off-season anabolic, it would be my favorite. Anadrol is very interesting. From what I understand, it does not interact directly with the androgen receptor. So they're not even 100% sure why it drives hypertrophy. It seems to be it's a very potent androgen. It is very strong at promoting strength. That's why powerlifters love it so much. It's also odd too because it's already reduced. It does not convert to estrogen or DHT, but yet it seems to somehow directly interact with the ER. Guys that run Anadrol sometimes will get gyno, and we're not even 100% sure why that happens from what I understand. But the reason why I like Anadrol, because it will put that size on you and give you that strength drive that you get from D-ball. And generally, most people I see tolerate it better than they do D-ball. It seems to be more well tolerated and you get strength. Now, personally, me at this point, my preference is for Anavar. Anavar gets you something like, I don't know, I'm just tossing out an arbitrary number, but I feel like I get like 70% of the strength drive that I get from Anadrol without all the shitty side effects from that Anadrol would drive. The high blood pressure, the liver toxicity. Now, Anavar still has some liver toxicity, but not to the degree that Anadrol does. I do find that the liver toxicity of Anadrol seems to be vastly overstated. I haven't seen people, if you run 50 milligrams of Anadrol, I haven't seen guys get their liver numbers absolutely crushed. The worst thing I've seen for liver numbers has been DHB. Personally, that's the one I've seen that really smashes liver numbers. Winstrol is pretty fucking bad at it. Superdrol is pretty bad at it. They both seem, to me, just anecdote. I look at hundreds of blood panels annually. I do 15, 20, 25 consults a week, and almost all of them have blood panel reviews involved in them. And I really just don't see dudes with wrecked liver values from running Anadrol. There might be a slight elevation in ALT and AST from running 50 milligrams. You might be in the 70s. Guys that are running DHB, I have seen dudes on DHB with ALT and AST north of 1,000 a couple times. Now, it's dose dependent. It's also genetics. But look, here's the thing. You kind of got to figure out what works for you. There is no one-size-fits-all answer. I know I have shit on D-ball in the past, but D-ball works great for some people. There is a small handful of people that it works great for. I would say it's probably 10% of people that respond really well to D-ball. I know the guys in the 70s, everybody points to those dudes that ran D-ball and they loved D-ball. But those were only the guys that were successful for every Arnold Schwarzenegger that ran D-ball and DECA, there were probably 20 dudes that got fat, grew gyno, and had a shit ton of acne. You know, so we didn't see those guys. They didn't get famous because they looked like shit. Arnold looked great, so he's the one that got famous, and he ran D-ball and DECA. Now, look, you got to figure out what works for you. Don't worry about what some influencer or pro bodybuilder is telling you works the best for them. That may not work for you. You gotta sort of figure that out and suss that out for yourself. If D-ball works well for you, you respond well to you, rock on with the D-ball. Maybe try Anadrol for a little bit and see how you handle it, and then make an educated and informed evaluation of which is better for your given physiology and goals. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this one. I appreciate each and every one of you. You all are awesome. You motherfuckers rock. Take care. I'll see you on the next episode. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.